Hello, my name's Rebekah, and I've been asked to speak to you this Easter Friday about what the cross means to me. And I'm quite excited to speak to you about that. I've been thinking about what it means to me in particular, and I think that, like to most people, the cross, of course, means forgiveness, it means grace because of Jesus' death. And to me, the word that came to mind was belonging. The cross means belonging to me. It means belonging to someone and somewhere, and by extension to a whole group of people. And I'll try and explain that a bit more. Like you probably have moved a number of times. I've had to move a number of times in my life. I've lived in 3 different countries and within Australia and a number of different parts of Australia as well, which means that I've ended up moving house 26 times so far, and I'm sure that there'll be more to come. And I don't enjoy packing and finding a new house and all that, but I don't really begrudge having had to have moved so often. I don't feel hard done by or anything. But one of the consequences of moving so often is that I feel like I've never really settled into one place in the world or in Australia, and never really felt like I belong or fit in with one particular group of people. Like people who are blessed to have grown up and had most of their lives in the same area of Sydney, for example, might feel. I was thinking about the sense of belonging, and I was thinking that it's an important concept for the generations around my generation. And I was thinking I probably might not be right about this, and I'm sure that my parents and grandparents can correct me, but I was thinking about the differences in generational values. And I was thinking that maybe for our parents' generation, that one of the things that they really valued were rights and freedom. And I think for our grandparents' generation, they were quite concerned with doing what was best for society, no matter what the cost. But I think the idea of belonging is important to our generation. I think too that it's not just about your actions, but who you are. It's important. Who you are means how much you're going to belong. I think that sometimes that can make us quite anxious. We can feel really anxious about getting it wrong, about making mistakes, because we know from social media that if we make a mistake, people will jump on us and judge us for that, and that we'll be branded for the rest of our lives, and we won't be accepted, we won't belong, we'll be cast out. And social media makes that all the more hard to belong somewhere. I sort of feel like because we've got all these connections that people fit in, but really there's a real sense, particularly in generations after mine too, that I don't really fit in, I don't belong, I'm alone. But I really feel that Jesus' death speaks into that the cross, it means that my mistakes are paid for. It means that my failings as a person are already dealt with. Who I am inside is a mess, a failure. But that's been replaced by Jesus' glory, because Jesus has already taken on all my failings. He's done all that's required for me to be accepted, for me to belong to God. We know that the cross has meant that my punishment and my social shame, I can never say that, and be kicked out of God's kingdom has been legally dealt with by Jesus. He took my place in God's courtroom of judgment. It's over. But it also means more than that. I can't really talk about Jesus' death without talking about his resurrection, even though I'm only meant to be talking about the cross. But if Jesus had only died and not come back to life, then yes, my sin and failing would have been dealt with, which would have been excellent. But Jesus rising from the dead means that the death and payment for sin isn't all that God's interested in. It means that Jesus is coming back, that he's not going to destroy and be done with us, but he's going to renew the world, he's going to rebuild it, he's going to make the universe glorious again, and that includes us. And God's going to live with us forever. We're not going to be separated from him. He's on one plane and we're on another. He's going to live with us. If that wasn't enough, the cross can mean even more to us. It means that whoever wants to be accepted by God is adopted into a family. We're adopted into God's family. We belong somewhere. You know, as I know, that life isn't easy. If you've only experienced a couple of hurdles in your life so far, more will come, unfortunately. And we've all experienced that a number of things go wrong in life. And I think it's something to keep in mind, that if we belong to God's family, then we're involved in the family business. Which means that we care about the things that God cares about. We care about our neighbours and workmates. We want to see other people adopted into God's family. We want to see the environment freed from its suffering. We want justice for the oppressed. We want the suffering to be comforted. And Jesus will let us experience many of these things and be involved in his plan for renewing the world now. So yes, the cross means that my sins are paid for. I've been redeemed by his blood. I've been set free from slavery. And these are all true, marvellous facts. But to get back to the suffering and the tumult of life, sometimes the difficulties in life mean that we feel like we don't fit in. We can look at other people who from the outside seem to have it easy, and it can make us feel more alone. Whether it's infertility that we go through, the loss of a child, a spouse's cancer, our own mental health struggling, the loss of a job, even the loss of a home, even the loss of our dreams and goals for the future. When we experience these things, it can really throw us. Even though we know to expect things to be hard in life, it can still really throw us, and we wonder where we belong, where we fit in life. For a few years, I lived in a country where most people don't speak English, and they don't see people from other countries very often. And I lived in a rural city. And in that rural city, there were very few people from other countries who ever visited. So when they saw people from another country, including us, they had a word that they would call out, which was the word for foreigner in that country. And we lived in a small apartment, but whenever we left our apartment, even to catch the lift downstairs, people would see us and they would call out and talk to each other and point at us and call out, foreigner, foreigner. At first it was a little bit amusing. People wanted to take selfies all the time, but after all it could become quite stressful, and people could be quite demanding and even grab the kids to take a photo of them. At one point, my husband got a bit sick of it, and as a joke, he said to people, yeah, sure, you can take a photo of the foreign kids if you pay the equivalent of $1. And we thought they'd go, oh no, but they were like, yeah, sure, we'll pay $1 to take a photo of the foreigners. So yeah, every day we were reminded that we didn't belong, we didn't fit in. Even when we'd lived there for 4 years, we were still the foreigners who didn't belong. And I think in the seasons of life that can be quite stressful when we don't feel like we fit in, it's good to remember that the cross means that I do belong somewhere and I belong to someone. Sometimes we don't have the emotional capacity in real moments of suffering to put prayers into sentences, or the energy to analyse what Jesus might be teaching me in the moment. Sometimes that stuff just comes with hindsight. But in those moments, even in real suffering, we can know that Jesus' sacrifice of love means that we're adopted. I'm adopted by my Father God. I belong. I'm in the family, and there's no getting out of it. There's no going back. You're adopted, you're in, and you stay there, which is marvellous. Sometimes, when kids are really little and they've done something, or they're just over it all and they're really upset, but they're even too overwrought, especially little kids, they're too overwrought even to tell you what's wrong, and they'll just come to the parent and fling themselves into your arms and have a big old hearty cry. And that's what the cross means we get to do with God. He's our dad. He's the King of the universe, yes, but we get to run into his throne room. We get to ignore all the ceremony of the kingdom, and we get to fling ourselves into our dad's arms, because that's where I belong. That's where you belong. One of the things I love about being part of a church community is that it's like a family. We sort of have this ideal version of the Hallmark family, but realistically the church is a very messy family with embarrassing uncles and annoying little sisters. I'm not calling out anybody in particular here, but that's where we need each other. We need each other to remind each other that we belong somewhere, that we fit in, even if we don't fit into the rest of society. And life circumstances mean that we feel like we don't belong. But our church family reminds us we need to remember to hang out with our church family, and they'll remind us to hang out with our Father God. We need to remember to keep talking to Jesus, keep looking at the cross and remembering that because of the cross, because of Jesus, you belong.